Knowing what's best for a musical theatre performer to have in their audition repertoire folder can just be a little bit of a chore, can't it? With so much material to pick from. As well as this pressure that singers might feel about picking the perfect audition song. Well, have no fear, because this week we are joined by Grace Galloway, straight from her run in Ride the Cyclone as Jane Doe, to help us understand how we can help build a repertoire folder that actually works in the audition room. Grace shares with us some practical advice on choosing songs you can rely on come rain or come shine, shaping material to fit different audition scenarios, and helping singers find repertoire that actually highlights their USP. From the different audition stages to song cuts and this myth of finding the perfect audition song. This episode is designed to help performers and teachers of musical theatre performers feel confident in creating a rep folder that can adapt to whatever audition comes next. Oh, Grace! Grace, can you share with us one of your best audition experiences and maybe pop in one of your worst as well?
Yeah, of course. So I think for me, the best audition experience I've ever had, or where I feel like it's gone the best, was actually for Ride the Cyclone. When I went in, I was exhausted. So I had had like four auditions and like slash recalls that week, and a lot of them had been dance calls. And it was also like the hottest week of the year last summer. So I think the last material round that I did for Ride the Cyclone was on the Friday of that week. So I had done loads of really intense auditions in the lead up to it. And I remember waking up in the morning and thinking, I have no ounce of nerves, adrenaline, energy in my body. And for me, I find that when I'm not nervous or when I'm not filled with adrenaline, I am at my best. So when I went in, I was totally calm and I was totally just like, let's just see what happens. And any people in the industry will know that there is a specific room in Danceworks that has the best acoustics. So I think of any audition room, they're upstairs, the ones on the front with the big windows. And the audition was in that room. And I just went in and I sang the Ballad of Jane Doe, and I was in the middle of it thinking, wow, this is going really, really well. But again, I had no ounce of nerves or energy to make me feel in any way tense. And it kind of solidified that actually when I'm not in my head, I am at my best. So I try and take that feeling into the rest of my auditions that I have done and do post that experience. And I think my worst audition experience was one of my first ever auditions. It was for the original Cruel Intentions version that went to the Edinburgh Fringe before Cruel Intentions was in the other palace and went on tour. And it was like my first audition out of drama school. And I was just so in out my depth. I was so scared. And I came down to London. I travelled down from Liverpool to London. And I made the silly mistake of going straight to the audition, straight off the train. So I'd not really done a warm-up. I'd spent 2.5 hours on a train, just getting totally in my head. And I walked into the audition room, and this was the recall, I think. And they gave us a song, and I think it was called I Don't Want to Wait. It's like a pop song. And I remember singing the first line. I went, I don't want to wait for our lives to be over. And just totally forgot the words and started honestly spouting gibberish. To cut a long story short, I ended up doing that like 3 times over. They let me start again, and I just did it again. And then they let me start again, and I did it again. And by the end of it, I was just like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. And I left that audition thinking, oh, I have so much work to do. I have such a long way to go. But it didn't stop me.
Isn't that quite a nice thing to say, like from the first times that you were going out auditioning to then Jane Doe? Like that didn't end anything. It wasn't the end of the world, even though it may have felt like it was at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
In auditions now, do you have a way of being able to calm yourself down a little bit more, or get out of your head?
Yeah, I do a lot of breath work, and any exercise that I do, I've learned now that high intensity, like interval training, running, things that like get your heart rate going really doesn't do anything for me. So I do a lot of hot yoga. I do a lot of Pilates. I do a lot of stuff that includes breath in the exercise. And then I also, contrary to popular belief, I also have turned off all of my notifications on social media. So I don't have any, like my phone doesn't pop up with anything because I think blocking out the noise is a huge part of it, especially in a show that has a big cult following. I think it's super important. And what I learned recently was that I actually blocking out the noise stops me from overthinking and stops me from worrying about what other people think. And ultimately, it's a subjective industry. So some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, and that's okay. But when you're in it and you're trying to go through that fight or flight, it's really hard to have that clarity of thought. So breath work and blocking out the noise are my two like big things that I have to constantly strive for.
Can you tell us about the different stages of a musical theatre audition in particular, and what you think from what you've been through, what the casting panel might actually be looking for at each stage?
Yeah, of course. So I think the first win ever of getting an audition is getting an audition because agents will submit clients or actors will submit themselves if they're unrepresented. And casting directors will get thousands and thousands and thousands of submissions coming through, especially if it's for a big show. So if you get an audition, especially if it's an in-person audition, if it's a meeting, a one-to-one or private meeting, they call it, you have won because you have gotten through those thousands and thousands of submissions. So I always think at that point, just know that they want you in some capacity. They think something about your CV, about what you've done before, about your look, about your vocal range, whatever it is something that they want. So you have to psychologically go, they want me. Then normally, if it's a first round, it will be a quick in and out situation. If it's an in-person audition, it will literally be, you go in, you maybe take two contrasting songs, they'll hear one, you bring in two, they'll hear one, you'll say a quick hello, and that will be it kind of thing. If it's for a big show, smaller shows or for some newer shows, they will get to know you a little bit more and they will ask you questions. I've had it before where they've like sat me down at the front desk and asked me what I've been up to and what I do, which is always really nice because you always feel a lot calmer in those situations. If it's a self-tape, they will either send you material or they will ask for just two contrasting songs normally. Then it will be a recall. Now, the recalls can vary to one recall or it can be, I've heard of like people having 9 recalls for shows, which I think is crazy. I actually think it takes up so much of our time and ultimately costs us money as actors. So you do your recall and sometimes there'll be a dance round involved with that. I'm more of a mover than a dancer. I can dance, but I wouldn't call myself a dancer. I'm more of a singer-actor. So normally there will be like a movement call at that stage, and then there will be a recall after that, which will probably be like a sort of final material round. They will hear you do some material from the show, and then it will be a final. I always think at every stage they are looking for individuality, a connection to text, a connection to character, an appreciation of the style, and confidence. They're just looking for you to go in and to just offer them something. I always think it's better to offer them something bold and exciting and fresh and new, something they've never seen before, and then they can work that, than to go in and offer them something that's apologetic or is a carbon copy of the last person that did that role or has done that thing before, because that doesn't stand out from anybody else. I always talk about USPs, unique selling points, to all of my students. And you have to think, what is my unique selling point? My unique selling point is the fact that I'm Scouse, I'm tall, and I can sing well. So whenever I go into an audition, I'm Scouse. I will sometimes add like a heel to make myself even taller sometimes. And I will hopefully most of the time sing really well. And I never ever apologize for that, ever. Because normally that's the thing that keeps me in people's brains. So yeah, there's just a couple of things that I think across the board they are looking for. They're just never ever looking for you to go in and be apologizing for what you're doing, because what's the point?
So, in your opinion, how important is the song choice that you take in when it comes to those professional industry auditions?
I think it's important. I don't think it's the be all and end all. Especially working at drama schools, I think third year musical theatre students or masters musical theatre students, when they're about to go into the industry and they're trying to finalise their rep, they get so in their heads about rep has to be perfect for each thing that I'm doing or each category of my rep folder or each show that I'm auditioning for. But ultimately, in my opinion, you have to sing repertoire that you enjoy singing and that you can connect to. Because if you go in and sing something that on paper academically is the perfect choice, but ultimately you have no connection to, you don't really enjoy singing, I think a panel can see that and they really like get that vibe. However, I think it's really important to have songs, A, that you enjoy, but B, that you can just whack out come rain or come shine. I never, in my rep folder, I have no songs that I am like iffy about. If I'm ill, I can sing them. If I'm feeling fantastic, I can sing them. I can go in, I can do like a really good job on all of them. And I never ever really learn new material for a specific audition. I will always try and shape the songs that already exist in my rep folder to fit the mold of what they're asking for. But I really do think it's important to curate a rep folder that A, you enjoy singing, and B, hits a few points that you know that you can just shape and mold as to when you need it.
Could you give us an example of a time where you've had to do that, where you've looked at your folder and thought, something on paper is not exactly the thing that I would take if I had a year to prepare for this thing, but I've shaped this thing to fit quite well?
Yeah, so I auditioned, it was a couple of years ago now. It was for the Tony Blair rock opera. Harry Hill wrote it. I got to meet Harry Hill. It was really cool. And I was in for Sherry Blair, or Sherry Booth, whichever one you want to call her. And she is Scouse. She's from Liverpool. She doesn't sound it anymore, but she is from Liverpool. And they just wanted a musical theatre song in the style of the show. Now, if anyone knows that show, it's bonkers. It's crazy. And I thought, I could go through and pick the craziest musical theatre song and do this, that, the other. But A, you don't have time, and B, you just don't have the energy to do that, especially if it's a first round. So I looked at my rep folder and I was like, what's a sort of characterful song that I could then shift and change to do in a Scouse accent and to do in the style of the character that I'm going in for. And I did Here I Am from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And in the song, it says, so here I am, Beaumont Mer, a big 2 weeks on the Riviera. And I changed it to, so here I am, Miss Sherry Blair, a big 2 weeks on the Riviera. and I did it in her style, and it got me down to the finals, that song. But have I ever used that song in that way, in that specific way, ever again? No. But is it in my rep? And do I use it for panto auditions, for characterful MT auditions? Yeah, I do all the time. So it's just shaping it to make it really specific for that audition.
I remember when I was auditioning for cruise ship contracts and I took in to Debbie O'Brien, who was casting Aida, Still Hurting from the last 5 years. That's not a great song for a cruise contract, but it was one that I knew that I was really familiar with and I really loved it. And it didn't do me any harm. I mean, I went on to do 3 contracts with. I mean, Debbie O'Brien did come out and say, can you bring something a bit jollier? Which is fair enough, but I still got through that first round of it. So, yeah, it kind of makes you think, where is the line of picking the perfect song and where you can actually use stuff that you already know and feel really good about?
Yeah, and I think it's down to time as well. Like for a first round, normally you will get like a few days notice or at most maybe a week's notice. Now, I don't know about you, but like I can't get a song ingrained in my voice and like muscle memory in a maximum of a week's time. It just doesn't happen. And also we all do so many things with our life day to day. If I had all day every day to sit and drill that song and get it into my voice, then fair enough. But we have to work, we have to live our lives. So ultimately it's never ever going to be enough time to get something super, super in our voice. So I think that's why like taking it along like gradually, just like in everyday life, constantly looking for new rep and thinking, could I maybe do that? Could I do this? Could I do that? I had an audition for Les Mis, and I have wanted to audition for Les Mis for years, but I've never got in the room. And it's so funny. I've had 2 songs sat there raring and ready to go for that audition because I knew that those were the songs that I wanted to do for that show. And I knew eventually one day I would get in. It's just about right place, right time. And I went in and took those songs in. It was I Hate Men from Kiss Me Kate. And I did it in my own accent again because I wanted to be memorable, my USP. And it was When I Look at You from the Scarlet Pimpernel. I ended up doing one of those songs and it was cut. And honestly, I was singing for about a minute and a half. And after that audition finished, they were just like, yeah, thanks. Okay, cool. And that was it. There was no pleasantries. I was in and out. And I came out thinking that all those years I've kept those songs aside to do for that audition. And it was literally in and out in the matter of moments. But did it get recalled? Yeah, I did. Because I had those rearing and ready to go. It wasn't a last minute scramble round decision of, panic, panic. I don't know what to pick. I knew that would come up eventually. I knew I wanted to sing those songs. Could I have picked other stuff in my rep? Yeah, of course I could. But I knew those specific songs were going to be perfect for that show. So I kept those ones raring and ready to go.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is that you don't have a rep folder that's stuck with you for life. You can change and you can work on stuff for the future and you can swap things out. But you might find that you have a handful of songs that actually are really reliable for you for a really long time. We don't have to stick to the same stuff as our casting changes, as we age, as we change in ourselves as well, and the route we want to go down.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's super important, I think, to keep it fresh, but also know that there are just ones there that will just serve you forever and ever and ever. And that's okay.
What are your thoughts on transposing for auditions?
I think when it's pop rock, it's okay because there are so many versions of different pop rock songs that we consume in everyday life that I don't think people necessarily know exactly what key a lot of pop rock songs are in. It depends how famous it is, I think, as well. But when it comes to musical theatre songs, I think there is a reason why a composer has written that song in that key because it's all linked to text, it's all linked to storytelling. And I think accompaniments are so linked to the emotional thoughts, feelings of that character that I think you have to serve that. I also think if it's because you're bringing down a key because you can't reach the notes of a certain song, I think that's quite obvious that you're doing that. And I just think pick a different song. There are so many songs out there that if you go in and take The Wizard and I into an audition and you bring that key down, everyone's going to know. So just don't do it to yourself. Pick something that's a little bit lower, a bit more comfortable in your range, and do that really, really well. And it will serve you so amazingly. So I think in some circumstances it's okay, but in some I just think just pick something else.
Hi, it's Lynn here, popping by with a free resource. If you're a singer who wants to teach but sometimes feels a little unsure or overwhelmed, I've put together some free resources to help you feel grounded and supported as you take your next steps. Just check the link in the podcast description and you'll get an informed, practical PDF guide to help you get started, plus a few follow-up resources to help you feel less of a fraud and more confident in your teaching journey.
And how common is the 16 bar cut compared to the 32 bar cut?
I mean, I might be quite controversial on this one, but I've actually never sang a 16 bar cut in an audition before, ever in my life. But that is because I have never auditioned for a cruise ship and I've never done an open call. So I think the only scenarios where you do those things are in a cruise ship audition and in an open call, purely because of the volume of people that they're meeting. I mean, you see the lines, they go on for miles outside, pineapple. And so they're just trying to hear a sound, hear your voice, see what you're about, and do it in the quickest possible time. Just know that, having a 16 bar cut of your contemporary ballads to take in for a private meeting that's going to last 5 to 10 minutes, you can do more than 16 bars. You could do like a minute and a half to 2 minutes. And that you are always, in my opinion, you're always better off doing less and them asking for more than them cutting you off. Always. So I never ever allow any of my songs to go over 2 minutes. I never sing full songs in an audition ever. But I certainly don't do 16 bars because how are you supposed to have a beginning, middle, and an end and show what you can do in 16 bars of music? That's mad to me. It's worth it and it's worth having them there if that's the sort of thing that you want to go in for. If you're like, I really want to do cruises, I think that's amazing, but know that 16 bars will probably be all you will sing, maybe 32. But for other stuff, I think you'll get a bit more than that.
Even like with my cruise auditions, I'm pretty sure I sang more than 16 bars. I'm pretty sure I sang a minute to a minute and a half, and then my recall I took Ironic by Alanis Morissette, and I sang more than that too. What style do you find yourself singing the most at the moment in auditions?
So, funnily enough, and this is only in like the last year, but I am now being branded as like the top sop of the musical theatre industry. So I keep getting asked to do top sop stuff, which I love. Like, I love legit. But I didn't always love legit. At drama school, loved belting and thought, that was the only thing for me. And it was only towards the end of my drama school career that I started to open up the world of opera and legit. And now, because I think everybody's seen me do it from all of the crazy videos and stuff from Ride the Cyclone, I think now people are like, oh, that's a safe bet for us. But when I first graduated, it was all rock pop. Like, every single audition I got was 2 contrasting rock pop songs, which is great. Like, it is great. But I knew that that wasn't necessarily where my voice loved to live. So I was having to make so many allowances for it to get it in that place and to keep it in that place. And then I did Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and that was a really tough contract for me because, again, my voice was having to sit in that slightly more poppy, rocky place, which naturally, I grew up watching Julie Andrews and Judy Garland. So that's where my voice wants to live. So I'm like really pleased about the things I'm being asked to do now. It's like really serving my soul. But equally, it's not to say that I can't do the other stuff. I can do it. And I've worked really hard to be able to access those sounds. I just think you should be able to do everything. If someone says to you, what are you? Are you an alto, a soprano, or this, that, the other? It's like, well, I can do the top sop stuff, but you can also put me on the alto line and I can also get down there. You can also ask me to do rock pop. You can ask me to do legit. You can ask me to do a character song. You can ask me to do folk. I feel like as artists, we have to be so rounded and like chameleons, strings to our bow, all those sorts of things, so that you open yourself up to as many job opportunities as possible. Whereas if you put yourself in a box, you stay in that box and it's difficult to get out.
What song did you end up taking in for Ride the Cyclone?
Well, funnily enough, it was a self-tape. The first round was a self-tape and they gave us 2 days to get it in and it was over a weekend. I had just been rejected from Legally Blonde the day that I got the self-tape for Ride the Cyclone. So I was in for Vivian in Legally Blonde and I was in a few rounds for that. And I got my rejection email, and Harry Blumenau, who casts that, also casted Ride the Cyclone. So I got the self-tape through after getting my rejection from Legally Blonde, and I had no idea what Ride the Cyclone was. Like, I'm so sorry to all the fans if they listen to this. They hate me for saying this, but I didn't. I had no idea. And I did a bit of research, and on the casting breakdown, it sort of said high soprano stuff, but we need it by Monday at 10 o'clock. And that weekend, I was going back to Liverpool to visit family, and we had a weekend full of plans. And I was on the way to the train station. I had no self-tape stuff with me. I had nothing. I didn't have my ref folder. I didn't have like a backing track. I literally had nothing with me. And on the casting thing, it said, if you need to send a pre-existing video, you can do this because of the time constraints. So they were very, very kind with that. And all I had really, because I hadn't been asked for this soprano stuff before, really at all, I had my vocal reel that I'd had done a year or 2 before. And I sang Gorgeous from the Apple Tree on there, but I did it in a RP accent. And it was like, it was very dramatic and very, over the top, really charismatic, literally the opposite to Jane Doe. So I cut that out of my vocal reel and I just sent that because I was like, well, that's all I've got. And we were on time constraints here. And also, I'm not rejigging my whole life to send a self-tape that I may or may not hear back from. I've got this here. It shows that I can sing those top notes. And if you want to hear more, you'll call me into the room. And that's exactly what they did. Sometimes I think we really do like scramble around and change our lives just to serve an audition, when ultimately I think you have to live a life and you have to enjoy your life And if things come up and you can make it work, fantastic. But if you can't, you do your best. And if they want you, they will have you.
And is that the mindset that you would say would serve anyone at any stage in their career, like from the very beginning graduates out of drama school into people who have now got professional credits and then up into people who would kind of get repeated work?
I think there has to be an element of that. You have to have an element of, I'm a human being with a life. And at the end of the day, yes, this is my dream. And yes, this is what I want to do. But it is also just singing, dancing and acting. And it is like, it's not that deep. But I think when you're first starting out, I think you do have to, A, for your own mindset, just for your craft and to get practice in, because I think there is such an audition etiquette and audition practice that when you get good at auditions, you end up booking more jobs. So I think for practice purposes, yeah, absolutely. And also because a lot of the time it's first impressions with these people. So you want to make a good first impression so that then if you're not right for that job, they will call you in for something else. But I do think that it does get to a point where we put so much of our lives on hold to do this job, when actually, when you start to open up your world to the possibility of other things in life being as, if not more than, more important than the job, I think the job becomes less deep, and I actually think it makes us better performers. I personally, from my own experience, I have become a better performer since I've become a singing teacher, because I love singing teaching. Like, I genuinely love it. I love coaching. I love performance coaching. I love working at the drama schools, and it fills me with so much joy, and I get so much fulfillment from facilitating other people's careers, essentially. I say this to everyone. I could never act another day in my life, and I genuinely would be happy. So then when I then go into auditions and when I go up for jobs for acting roles, if I get it, it's a cherry on top of an already fantastic cake. So therefore I'm walking into the room being like, if I get this, great. If I don't, that's also fine, because I love my life. I have an amazing life. Like, I can give an example. The final for Ride the Cyclone. I didn't realise the final was going to be, like, there was another round after what I thought was the final. And the team asked me to come in the following week after what I thought was the final. And I was going on holiday on that Sunday to Greece. Now, I had not been on a holiday abroad for like 4 years. And I'd done loads of work and I was exhausted and I'd paid loads of money for this holiday. And I sat for ages thinking, do I change the flights? Do I come back and then go back again to Greece? And I was away for a week. And then I took a moment and was like, actually, just give your head a wobble, Grace. Like, you are going to possibly spend thousands of pounds trying to come back for an audition that you might get, but you also might not get. And you have to really save your soul and think, I work really hard, and if this opportunity then doesn't go my way, then that's a choice that I've made. But at least I've done it because I want to do something that I feel I deserve, because I work really hard. And I was like, and the universe and, you know, fate will decide. So I taped all the stuff before I went on holiday, in case they then were like, well, can you send a tape for us? And lo and behold, they did. They said, can you send a tape of all the material that we've done? And at that point I thought, oh, it's gone. It's gone. I know it is. And I spent 2 weeks waiting for a response. And I was like, I was waiting for a no. I thought, it's just a no, it's fine. You know, this is producer finals. The big producers were all in that room. Somebody else is going to go in, have made a good impression, and, you know, on to the next one. And I got an offer. I got an offer for it. And I remember being gobsmacked. But what ended up happening was I got to go on my nice holiday. I got to recoup and I got to really relax. I then got offered the job. And then I went and did loads of really hard work that was amazing. But in hindsight, I really needed that holiday before I started that job. So I think sometimes it's about just trusting your gut and being like, I'm willing to let that thing go to save myself as a human so that I can then go in and do that fantastic work eventually. And just not like let it get on top of you, I think.
Well, other people in your support network, were they also on board with that decision? Like, for example, your agent and that sort of thing?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think agents get a bad rep. Like, I really do think that, you know, most agents are just human beings who want to support you and help you in ways that they know best too. And, you know, my agent at the time, I think, knew that I really needed that holiday because I'd done a lot of work. And also they knew that sending a self-tape wasn't the end of the world. Clashes in the scheduling do happen. And I think they were just like, yeah, that's okay. We'll send a self-tape. We'll see what happens. And on to the next one. They believe in you. So you just have to trust that.
I think what this shows us is a really good example of continuing to work on your craft, to keep your skills up and ready, to make self-tapes before you even have an audition come in so that you have something to fall back on if you need to just be really prepared in the background so that if these things do come up, you have options rather than being at the mercy of that email and having to have a panic. I think that can settle you a little bit more as an actor in life.
For sure. I think we are control freaks in a controlless industry as actors. I am like textbook that. So for me, it's about going, let's control the controllables, and anything else, I have to just let go. So in that moment, I controlled what I could control and it worked in my favour. Other times it hasn't. Things similar to that have happened before and it's not gone my way. But ultimately I was in control of the outcome of it. So it's on me then, and it's not, I don't feel panicked, I don't feel worried. I just feel secure, controlled, and then you go on to the next thing.
What is the current buzz song that is going around at the moment? Have you heard something continuously for a bit of time?
Yeah, I think a lot of the Beetlejuice stuff, Dead Mom from Beetlejuice, every female presenting student who comes into my studio has that in their rep or wants to work on that. It's a great song, but I do think there are other songs really similar to it. And I also think because it's about to come into the West End, I think there's like a buzz around it of like, oh, this material is really exciting and really cool. And I also think because they did the open call as well, a lot of people were singing it, whether they were in that room or not.
If you had to design the ideal song rep book for, let's say, a working female identifying singer in 2026, what genres and types of songs would it include and why? Obviously, with the fact that they all have a connection to you and you can really tell the story.
Yeah, that is the most important thing, always. So I think a pop rock ballad and a pop rock up-tempo. We were discussing what kind of era would be best. And I think the 80s to 90s gives you the best vocal and it also gives you the best connection to storytelling. But that's just my preference. That's my 2 pence. I then think a contemporary ballad, musical theatre contemporary ballad, something that you can connect to, but something that shows a more belty, rounded whole sound. I then think a contemporary up-tempo / character song. I think you can get those two things in the same world because ultimately you want these to be interchangeable. So you can change the accent, you can change the context, you can change, I don't know, the way that you sing them in any way. You can really chop and change these things. So I think you can sort of marry those two things together. If you can't, obviously you pick 2 separate ones. But just now, never get set on singing these a certain way. I have it so much in my studios when people come in and I say, okay, can you now do this in your own accent? And you see the panic set in their face. No, I can only do American or RP. And ultimately at the moment, people love individuality. They want to get to know you. So they have to be able to, in the moment, do something different.
I'm just pressing the pause button on the podcast for a very brief moment to invite you to book your free BAST call. If you've been thinking about joining the BAST community through one of our courses, but you just don't know which option is the best for you, then why not book your free Zoom chat with our very own Kimberly George, who has all the answers. Head over to basttraining.com/book-a-call/ and click that big blue button. That's basttraining.com/book-a-call/. Now, where were we?
Just a question on that, Grace, because I'm not a auditioning performer anymore, but I have a bog standard RP accent. What can I do?
But I think that's part of you, isn't it? That's part of who you are. your slightly RP accent is exactly who you are. So why would you go in and pretend to be something that you're not? You've got to use that. Well, that's my accent. So when I go in and I'm using my own accent, it is RP because I walk in and I talk the way I'm about to sing, but it doesn't define you. Like, for example, I'm from Liverpool and when I sing, I'm in a Scouse accent, but it doesn't mean to say that I am brash and harsh all the time because that's what the stereotypical Scouse person is. Someone with an RP accent that is their native accent doesn't need to go in and do something prim and proper and really emotional and delicate.
Oh, well, that is me. Jokes.
But it's true though, isn't it? Why can't you go in and use your own voice and do something that's gritty and rocky or whatever you want to do, but something that doesn't fit that stereotype? I think it's more of the person than the actual accent, but it's just using your own voice rather than putting on a voice. And then finally, I think a legit song. If you've got legit in you, if you've got that quality in you, then it's worth having. But I do always think it's worth having these songs anyway, because you just never know what you're going to get called in for.
And do you think that it should be pre-1965 legit or contemporary legit?
I don't think that matters when you're out in the industry. I think for drama school, it really does matter. I think it's useful if, like, for example, I get called in for a lot of legit shows now. So it's useful for me personally to have a sort of pre-1965 legit song and a contemporary one, just so they're interchangeable. But ultimately, I don't think if you don't really get called in for legit stuff, and on the odd occasion, once in a blue moon, you get asked to do something more classical, you've just got it there in your back pocket. But you only start to know that once you start auditioning and start to really curate what your casting is.
Have you ever had to use a Disney or a Sondheim?
No. No. But then that's because I think Disney, I don't think I've ever been in for a Disney show or Disney-esque show because I'm really tall and I will never play the love interest. But I'm also too young to play like the villain at the moment, especially when I was first auditioning, when I first came out of drama school. If you're auditioning for a lot of pantos, if you're auditioning for a lot of Disney stuff, then it's, again, worth having in your locker. And when you're a graduate, I think it's worth having in your locker. But ultimately, for me, I know my casting doesn't really go that way. And I feel like I know enough Disney songs that if somebody was like, we need a Disney song, I'd be like, okay, I can just whack them on out for you. But you've just got to start to understand your casting. And then Sondheim. I've never been in for a Sondheim show, and I would never take a Sondheim in for a show that wasn't a Sondheim. Because I think simply the piano playing, the accompaniment is so hard and difficult to play. And I say this to my students all the time when you go into an audition. It is a duet between you and the pianist. It's not a solo performance. So if I'm going in and I want the pianist who may have never seen this piece of music in their life or played it in their life, and you're trying to do your best job under the circumstances, and they play the music terribly, then it just makes your life so much more difficult. So I sometimes think just steer clear of the really, really hard stuff, just to give you peace of mind.
We were talking about audition cuts earlier. Do you have the same cut or do you change up your cuts?
I have the same cuts, to be honest with you. I do have the same cuts because I think cuts are really difficult to do well, because essentially you're skipping out part of a narrative or part of a emotional arc in a song purely for time. So when you cut a song, I think it's super important that the song still has a beginning, a middle, and an end, so that you can go on that emotional journey of the character, whatever it is. So I do normally try and find a really good one and stick to it. I also find as well, and this happened to me really recently, and my showcase song for drama school was a song called If You Hadn't But You Did from Two on the Aisle. And my drama school showcase, it served me so well because I could do all the classical stuff and I added a big opera, like Zenza, in the middle of it. And I then belted, the middle section. So in a showcase, it was the perfect song. But there was a lot of cuts in that song that were made for that specific showcase. And the band knew that song then. They rehearsed it, they knew it, and the cuts were fine. And then in the last sort of 8 years that I've been in the industry, I've taken that song in a couple of times, and all different pianists have never played it very well because there's so many cuts and the cuts are awkward. Now, I have laid that out in my rep book and on my sheet music so clearly. It's highlighted, it's done well, it's, got notes written in, and it's really clear. But ultimately, what I've come to realize is that the cuts are too bitty and it's too chunky. That in that moment, that pianist can't quite comprehend what's going on. So therefore, whenever I'm singing it, I feel like I'm having to drag them along with me, and I'm not really in the moment, and I'm not serving the text as well as I could do. I also have this thing where I keep a note of auditions that I do, and then the outcome of each audition and what I did for that audition. So recently, that specific song I've taken in for a few things, and I've made a note of it, and it's like, did I get recalled, or what stage of the process did I get to? And I saw a correlation of every single time I sang that song, I wasn't getting recalled. So for me, the last time I did it, I was like, right, 3 strikes and you're out. And that's what I say, 3 strikes and you're out. If I go in and I don't get recalled from a certain song 3 times, and that might take years to come to that conclusion, which it has for me, 8 years to come to that conclusion. But the 3rd time I sang it was only recently. And again, didn't get recalled. And I thought, that's not serving me anymore. So it's out.
And that's probably a really good example of it wasn't anything to do with you or your capabilities.
No.
But there's something about that song in that scenario where pianist and performer just can't meet on the same level.
Yeah, we can't gel. I think the key is really awkward. The key that it's in is really hard to play. And the cuts that I was making to get it under that 1.5, 2 minute marker were just crazy. It was like jumping from one page to another. And I thought, just give yourself the best chance. Just get rid of that song. Yeah.
What would be your top tip for cutting a song for an audition? I know you said that there should be a beginning, middle, and an end. Have you got any sort of pattern that you follow, anything like that?
I always think never repeat anything in a song, especially in pop rock. In pop rock, normally you get verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. I would always take out either the first verse and chorus or the second verse and chorus, because they're essentially the same thing. You're just repeating yourself, and no one wants to hear a repetition of the same thing. And in a way, in musical theatre, if there's ever a repeat, sometimes at the ends of songs, a character will repeat the same line 3 times. The example that's just popped into my head is On My Own from Les Mis. And at the end, she goes, I love him, I love him, I love him. She says that 3 times in an audition. I love him, but only on my own, probably, purely for time. And then I also think it's about flow of the song as well. If you are changing keys in the middle of a word or a phrase or making it really clunky, just note that that's going to feel really awkward in a room. So always make sure that musically it makes sense. Now, whether you have to get somebody to play through it for you, or you have to, use a little bit of money to go and clear that with somebody, then I think that's an investment in yourself and will serve you later down the line, because if you then end up booking a job from that audition, you will earn that money back tenfold. I think there are a few academic things that you have to make sure that you do, as well as that beginner, middle, and an end with the story arc.
Can we do a little case study where we take some examples of songs that might be in a rep book and then look at some musicals that people might be up for and see what would fit where and how you could change some stuff? So in this rep folder, let's imagine that somebody has Dear Friend from She Loves Me as their legit choice. They have Watch What Happens from Newsies as that contemporary MT and also like a patter song. All I Ask by Adele as their ballad pop rock. Let's also chuck in there You Ought to Know. I never know whether to say You Oughta Know.
You ought to know, yeah.
Because You Ought to Know sounds terribly RP. You Ought to Know by Alanis Morissette.
Love it.
Let's say they have Adelaide's Lament from Guys and Dolls as like a standard Broadway character type piece. And Everybody Loves Louis from Sunday in the Park with George So we know what they might be missing out of the explanation you gave us earlier. But let's say they are going in for Beetlejuice. There doesn't seem to be anything totally perfect for that. So what would you take other than learning something brand new if your audition was tomorrow, and how could we make that more suitable for Beetlejuice?
So I think if it is for, say it was for Lydia, let's say cover Lydia. I think cover Lydia is really useful because you'll be in the ensemble as well as occasionally going on as Lydia. So you have to know that in the ensemble, you will be asked to do lots of different things and jump through lots of different hoops. So I think Watch What Happens from Newsies is an example of vocal agility, being able to jump through lots of different hoops. And it's a great one for acting through song as well. In Beetlejuice, we know that the characterization of the characters is huge. So I think it's a great one to be able to show the sort of roller coaster of emotions of different characters. And then I think the best choice for Lydia would be You Ought to Know. You Ought to Know, whatever we want to say, we want to call him. But it's got that, like, if we're thinking of Beetlejuice as a style and Lydia as a character, we're going for that, like, grungy, rocky, hard done by angst in that character, even though the sound quality is quite pingy, twangy, perhaps. But the emotional drive of the character is that angst and that need for clarity on her life. So I think, yeah, that sort of rock pop anthem is a great one that matches the style of the show and specifically that character.
Let's switch it right on to its head then and go with a Les Mis.
So for Les Mis, I would probably say for Thénardier, Adelaide's Lament from Guys and Dolls, but I would do it in the accent of the Thénardiers, in that real Cockney accent. Just completely spin it on its head. And I would do it as the Thénardier singing that song. I always give the example of take the song and imagine that that song is a new song in Les Mis or in the show that you're auditioning for. The writers have decided to write Thénardier's Lament in Les Mis, and it's this song that you're being presented with. And that's how you would do it. You would do it in the style of that character, but it's just different words that you're singing. And then I think maybe something like Dear Friend, because it shows if you were then in the ensemble or you're doing any ensemble singing, that you can access that style of sound, because Les Mis comes from that slightly more classical world, has influences from the opera world. It's sung through. The actual style and quality of the voice sits a little bit more in that world. So it just shows that you can do that, shows that you can access that sound and style. And it's quite contrasting as well.
What about something like Hadestown? Because Hadestown is, oh my God, it's one of my favourites.
Yeah, it's so good.
That folky is very much a vocal score.
Yeah, it is. And I think from looking at like the choices, I think that's one of the only ones where I would be like, it's a stretch to get one of these songs to fit that folky sort of sound. I think, again, You Ought to Know is great for the song, I'm coming, wait for me, that one that she sings, that angsty sort of desire and need to sing. I think you can get that in that song, but that's slightly more chilled out. I don't think we get any of that here. So that would be a world where I go, okay, if they're my songs that I take into like every audition ever, we all have songs that we consume all the time, like pop rock songs that we hear all the time, or ones that you go, I used to love singing that when I was a kid, or my mum used to sing that song all the time, or, songs that you've never sang really before, but you do know them. It's not like I'm going, hi, Google, what song could I sing for Hadestown? That's not the case at all. But it's, I love the artist Yebba, right? Yebba is one of my favourite singers ever. Now, I've never sang a Yebba song in an audition. But if I was to get an audition through for Hadestown and I had that list, I'd be going, but I love Yebba. And I think that would be a brilliant audition song. And I know all of the words to the song October Sky because I just love the song. So maybe I do that one. So it's not necessarily in your rep, but it's certainly something that you
That's
know
already in your blood. Yeah.
that's there, that is
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
If you could eliminate one audition myth that just swims around and has been swimming for years, what would you pick and what would you say about it?
Probably that everybody is judging you in the waiting room. Everyone's looking at you and really judging you and is listening to you and is making an assumption about you. Because I can honestly tell you that everybody is just bothered about themselves. Everyone is worrying about themselves, worrying about what they're about to do, worrying about how they're about to be. Nobody is listening or looking at you going, well, what are they doing? What's this? Because people actually don't have the capacity to do that in that environment at all. And that kind of leads nicely on to the panel are on your side. Ultimately, like the panel want you to be brilliant because you will make their job easy. If you're fantastic and you're what they're looking for, it's an easy life for them. So they're happy. So they are never ever wanting you to trip up. They never want you to do a bad job. They're always there willing you to be brilliant. They might not show it in their face and they might not come across that way. But ultimately, they have a job to do and they're just looking for the right person for the job. They're not bothered about whether you crack, whether you stumble as you come into the room, whether you sing the wrong words. It doesn't matter. If you're right for the job, you're right for the job. And they want you to be right for the job.
Speaking of being right for the job, you have a very exciting project coming up. Can you tell us where we can see you next in action?
Yeah, so I'm playing Rita in Educating Rita by Willie Russell at Dundee Rep Theatre. Funny story about that I'll tell you is that when the season announcement was announced at Dundee Rep, I saw that Educating Rita was announced, and I've always wanted to play Rita. I think it's one of the best plays ever, Educating Rita, and I've also done another Willie Russell show before. I did Blood Brothers. So I love him as a writer. And I saw it had been announced and I thought, I'm going to email the artistic director and I'm going to be like, if you're auditioning for this, please can I put my hat in the ring because I think I would be great. I did that. The artistic director got back in touch with me a couple of weeks later and was like, we're doing a read through of the play to see where the show is going to go and what direction the director wants to take it in. I went up and in my head, I knew that was my audition. I knew that that was the chance to really to shine in that moment. Went up, it was super chilled. I did the read through and then a week later, they offered me the job. So that all came from me sending an email on a whim. It did not come from my agent getting me the job or getting me the audition or, 1,000 submissions. It just came from me going, let's just see. Let's just put my name out there. The reason why it all happened that way is because I made their life easy. So it comes back to what I was saying before. When you make a casting director or a director or whoever it is life easier, that's what they want. So just go in and do the thing, be brilliant. Because ultimately it will lead on to an opportunity that I never ever thought would come my way, ever. But what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They'll say no. They'll go, no, sorry, it's already cast. And you'll go, okay, great, no props.
But at least you've popped your head up above the water and said, hey, I'm a performer.
Exactly. And, I've done that so many times and no one's ever replied. I've not got anything back from them. But on this one occasion, it worked. So that's what I'm doing next.
Obviously, as you mentioned before, you're a singing teacher too. So where can we find out more about your teaching work and follow you and kind of see where your career takes you?
Yeah, so I am a vocal and performance coach. So I help people audition for drama schools, do professional auditions, and to enhance and to progress their own voice and their own performance. I have a website, www.gallowayvocals.com. I'm also on Instagram at Galloway Vocals or my personal Instagram, which is Grace Galloway XX. You can email me at gallowayvocals@gmail.com. And yeah, just get in touch. I do online sessions and I also do in-person lessons in London. But then occasionally I go back up to Liverpool sometimes. So if you're a Scouser and you want a lesson, let me know because I'm up and down, back and forward to Liverpool. And I'm also going to be up in Scotland for 2 months. So if any Scottish people want a lesson, then I am more than happy to facilitate that. But yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Grace. It's been lovely to chat and get your insights. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.